was the holiday camp king, a legend, complete with rags to riches story. Yet behind the Mr. Happiness image lies a darker character and an untold story.
He said to me once, he said, Bert, there's 4 things in a man's life: woman, money, ambition, and power.
He was called the Holiday Camp King. He was the greatest showman in the world. He was a most remarkable man. He was a phenomenon.
His idea was, I'm bigger and better. And so he was.
W.E., Billy Butlin, M.B.E., this is your life.
Throughout his life, Billy Butlin carefully constructed his legend. So much so that in 1959, when he appeared on this extraordinary edition of This Is Your Life, the Red Book surprise was no surprise at all. He was seen as the barefoot boy who rose to honors and mixed with royalty, a family man, a friend to the church and charity. But it was a long way from the truth.
Are you ready to come?
I'll never trust you guys.
William Butlin was born in 1899 in Cape Town, South Africa. His parents' marriage failed, and at the age of 6, he was in Britain. To earn a crust, he and his mother returned to the ways of her family, traveling with the traditional fairs, selling gingerbread. After several years on the road, his mother, Bertha, married again, and the new family emigrated to Canada. Underage, Billy Butlin volunteered for World War I. In France, he was a stretcher bearer and bugle boy amidst the horrors. In 1921, he returned to England to seek his fortune on the fairgrounds. But the Raggedy Kid had help at hand. Relatives gave him a hoopla stall and all the traditional generosity of fairground folk for one of their own. In his autobiography, he says he accidentally made the hoopla too easy. It proved to be good business. He gave away more prizes but took more cash. What he doesn't say is that the prizes were just cheap swag.
The chocolates he used to give away, I think they were about 2 or 3 shillings a gross. He used to buy them from a firm that made all this swag. And some of the canaries that they used to have to give away were dyed wrens. They were dipped in yellow dye. And there were more of them dead on the bottom of the cage in the morning. He wasn't 1 move ahead of anybody. I say he was 2 moves ahead.
He was a showman. He was brought up with the boys, learned how to fight and punch and, you know, look after themselves. All showmen are like that. They're a wild bunch.
Over the next helter-skelter 5 years, Butlin moved fast and built up a complete traveling fair all of his own. His employees were often close relatives, but he also had a network of spies, and fairground suspicions ran deep.
If a ride wasn't moving, these people that he employed, what they called Gs, they'd get on another ride, and of course others would follow. At the same time, they used to watch the take-ins or the cashiers, that they weren't fiddling, but he made it almost impossible to fiddle.
He used to put his men in these coats and things and trousers. But I don't believe the trousers, I believe the trousers were, there were no pockets in the trousers. We all know the reason why, don't we?
Billy worked hard, but he played hard too. He met his first wife, Dolly, as he minded one of his stalls. She was one of 10 girls, daughters of a Tiverton fish and chip shop owner. She wasn't the only one to catch his eye.
When he met Dolly, now, she was a fiery bugger. And I think that he tried every sister in a way, because they were all good lookers.
We know that he had an affair with most of them. The one, the earliest sister that he left unblemished. He was a miniature Clark Gable, really. He was attractive, there's no doubt about it. And he couldn't resist an attractive girl.
My father said to him, I think you should marry Dolly. You can't go carrying on like this. And I think it was my father had asked him to marry Dolly. I think it was one of these things that my father was feeling sorry for Dolly. You know, because Billy was away such a lot, we never knew where. Nobody knew where he went and never even told his mother.
The fair made him plenty of cash. But for a man who loved to bob and weave, it was aptly the dodgems that made him his first fortune. For £2,000, a huge amount in those days, he snapped up the European rights to this newfangled attraction from America. And for the rest of his life, it's said, he took a cut on every ride. Billy Butlin was gaining power and influence, but he was also making dangerous enemies in the fairground jungle.
There was a great competition between show people for penny arcades. There was another gang down at the Haymarket. And one night, Bill went with his gang, all carrying cutthroat razors and truncheons, and smashed up the arcade in the Haymarket. He was a man who was always afraid of having retribution. So he carried his open razor, his cutthroat razor, I call it, in his top pocket all the time. They were all gangsters, weren't they? Or at least, if they weren't gangsters, they were that type.
Barely 30 and awash with cash, Billy Butlin now made a bold move. He stopped traveling with his fare and set up permanent amusement parks at seaside resorts all round England. It was a massive gamble at a time when breaks away for the working man were all but unknown. In 1928, he opened his first park at Skegness on the Lincolnshire coast.
He had some spare ground, so he built a zoo. It soon got packed, you see, because it was only a circle. So what he decided to do, he had an old opening cut in the side and a turnstile that only worked one way, and a great notice put up to the egress. And everybody, having got round, got it as far as, oh, we go through here for the egress. And of course, egress is naturally exit, isn't it? They used to think they're going to see another animal, and they used to find themselves outside the zoo. And if they wanted to go back, they have to pay to go in again.
Six years later, Butlin